Tavanmameti asata avarga Yavannatengrim abhayam praviniti lokaha Tavatvayam dravinade sunimittam Shokaspraha paribhava vipulascha lobha Tavanmameti asatapavarga atimulam Yavannatengrim abhayam pravinita lokaha. Please repeat.
Tavat-bhayam dravina-deha suhrin-nimittam
Nimittam
Shokak-spriha paribhavo vipulascha lobha
Shokaspraha paribhavo vipulascha lobha
Tavan-mametya satavagraha arti-moolam
Tavanmameti satapavarga artimulam Yavannatengrim abhayam pravinita lokaha
Tavan-bhayam dravina-deha suhrin-nimittam
Shokaspraha paribhavo vipulascha lobha
Shokaspriha paribhavo vipulascha lobha
Tavanmametya sattvagraha artimulam
Tavan-mametya satavagraha arti-moolam
Yavannatengrim abhayam pravinita lokaha
Tavat-bhayam dravina-deha suhrin-nimittam
Tavat-bhayam dravina-deha suhrin-nimittam
Shokaspraha paribhavo vipulascha lobha
Shokaspraha paribhavo vipulascha lobha
Tavan-mametya sad-avagraha arti-moolam
Tavan-mametya sattvagraha artimulam
Yavannatengrim abhayam pravinita lokaha
Matajis. Okay. Tavat, until then, bhayam, fear, dravina, wealth, deha, body, surit, relatives, nimittam, for the matter of, shokaha, lamentation, spriha, desire, paribhavaha, paraphernalia, vipulaha, very great, cha, also, lobha, avarice, tavat, up to that time, mama, mine, iti, thus, asat, perishable, avagraha, undertaking, artimulam, full of anxieties, yavat, as long as, na, do not, te, your, anghrim abhayam, safe lotus feet, pravernita, take shelter, lokaha, the people of the world. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O my Lord, the people of the world are embarrassed by all material anxieties. They are always afraid. They always try to protect wealth, body, and friends. They are filled with lamentation and unlawful desires and paraphernalia, and they avariciously base their undertakings on the perishable conception of mind and mind. mine. As long as they do not take shelter of your safe lotus feet, they are full of such anxieties. Purport. One may question how one can always think of the Lord in regard to his name, fame, quality, etc. if one is embarrassed by the thoughts of the family affairs. Everyone in this material world is full of thoughts about how to maintain his family, how to protect his wealth, how to keep pace with friends and relatives, etc. Thus he is always in fear and lamentation, trying to keep up with the status quo. In answer to this question, this verse spoken by Brahma is very appropriate. A pure devotee of the Lord never thinks of himself as a proprietor of his home. He surrenders everything under the supreme control of the Lord, and thus he has no fear for maintaining his family or protecting the interests of his family. Because of this surrender, he no longer has any attraction for wealth. Even if there is attraction for wealth, it is not for sense enjoyment, but for the service of the Lord. A pure devotee may be attracted to accumulate wealth just like an ordinary man, but the difference is that a devotee acquires money for the service of the Lord, whereas the ordinary man acquires money for his sense enjoyment. Thus, the acquisition of wealth by a devotee is not a source of anxieties, and is the case for a worldly man. And because a pure devotee accepts everything in the sense for serving the Lord, the poisonous teeth of accumulation of wealth are extracted. If a snake has its poison removed and bites a man, there is no fatal effect. Similarly, wealth accumulated in the cause of the Lord has no poisonous teeth, and the effect is not fatal. Pure devotee is never entangled in material worldly affairs, even though he may remain in the world like an ordinary man. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunitamena Tasmai Shigurava Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swam Rupakadamayam Dadadi Sapatantikam Vandeham Shigurashitapatakalam Shigurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrisam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadhuitam Sabatinam Paritan Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Rita Shivachakam Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhi Ramanda Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishavanashati Devi Pranamami Ripi Vancha Kalpatarvi Kripa Sindhavya Vachapitanam Pavani Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashthabhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashthabhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharni Nirviseshanyavadi Paschati Shani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jnananandamayam Devan Nirmal Spratikakritim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrivam Upasmahe Guru Vaishnava Bhagavanti Narasmarana Hay Vigna Vinashan Anayasha Nijavanjana Purana. Okay, so here Brahma speaking. Very important verse that's many times throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. The purport that's given here, or the just the knowledge given here by Brahma in regards to the people of this world, and how they're embarrassed by anxieties and fear. And we can see that in life constantly, whether examining our own life in the past or examining the life of other people, and now seeing it through the eyes of Shastras, seeing it through the eyes of knowledge. I'm going to move this because it's really annoying. So seeing it through the eyes of knowledge, we can understand the nature of this world, that is bhayam, that it is full of fear. Everybody is full of fear. Every living entity in this whole universe, and this material universe, is full of fear, whether from the ant to Indra. We can see all the time, any time in Srimad Bhagavatam, that somebody performs this Ashwamedha sacrifice, immediately Indra becomes full of anxiety. Immediately he becomes full of fear. Such a position is the king of heaven. So even the ant, you see, always full of fear, always looking for that honey, or looking for the sweet, or looking for food, and scared that it will get caught and killed. Or actually, some of them, they're so pulled by the desire to enjoy, they don't even mind dying in the process. But fear is there, that I won't be able to collect enough, that I won't get enough. So out of that fear, then they're even willing to die. So the nature of this material world is that actually largely our existence is based on fear. If you examine all of the people that are living in this world, they're all based on fear. Actually, you go to school based on fear. You work a job based on fear. Everything we do in this material world is based on fear. Otherwise, people will not do anything. All your roads, they have to have rules and regulations. It's based on fear, that if you speed, you get a fine, or the police will pull you over. Or, you may, hopefully people can understand they'll also take their own life. But so many rules and regulations are there based on fear. And people's whole life and existence is on that. Especially now in the modern material world, modern days, is more and more. Why? Because you have to work a job in order to try to keep your house, and now so many things are being introduced, tariffs and this and that and inflation, and you can barely earn enough just to make a living, just to maintain a house. I think if you work a standard job, like an ordinary job, you just make ends meet almost. That you make enough just to pay for your rent and probably put some food on the table, and the food you put on the table is also pretty trash because you get it from the supermarket and it's all, so much chemicals are mixed in with it. If you want to buy organic, it's like you can sell your kidney or something for it. You go to Whole Foods and to buy 2 sweet potatoes is like $20. It's like crazy. It's a crazy civilization. So it's full of fear. Even the food, even the people that are buying, organic, it's based on fear that I don't, I'm going to ruin my health if I don't buy this. So I have to go out of my way to spend all of this money to buy organic, which, even that so-called organic is perhaps, if we actually examine it, may not be really organic. So the whole material existence is based on fear. That people are constantly just running after. Why? Because they want to enjoy. Because of the tendency for enjoyment, hedonistic society, it creates so many situations in which we have to be in a fearful situation. As Srila Prabhupada writes in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, that the atmosphere, the anxieties exist here because we're trying to create a permanent existence in the atmosphere of non-existence. That is our situation. That we're constantly trying to endeavor to try to find happiness in the atmosphere in which there is Dukhalayam Shashvatam. It's temporary and miserable. Trying to find permanent happiness in which by nature it is, it's like trying to find a dry spot under the ocean. How can you do it? Not possible. So it is an unnatural situation. And because of the unnatural situation, so much fear arises. Well, the unnatural situation is that the identification of the body with this dehi, the person within, the soul within this body identifies with this body. So fear arises, as the Srimad Bhagavatam says, bhayam dvitiya bhiniveshatasya ishad apetasya viprayayo smritihi tanmayayato buddha abhejatam bhaktaika yesham gurudevatatma. Fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body because of the absorption in external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency of illusion called Maya. I'll read the rest of it a little bit later. But so this is the condition of the soul. This is the condition of the living entity under material atmosphere, that is, there's a constant misidentification. One is thrown into illusion, as Krishna says, that the Maya, that is the potency of Maya, covering potency and throwing potency. So we're constantly thrown into material existence and covered by it also. And so we're always misidentifying with this body and the extensions of this body, with home, family, society, community, this earth, such and such and such. So these are all anarthas, that they're actually things that are unwanted in our life. They have nothing to do with who we are, but yet we're so strongly pulled by illusion that we completely identify it as our very self, as our very life. Although we come into this world with nothing and we leave it with nothing, and we know that, still there is identification with it. That is the nature of illusion. Even the atheist, as Krishna even propounds that philosophy to some extent in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, even if you don't believe in the soul, even if you believe that everything there is nothing after it, even if everything just ends after the body, what is there to be anxious about? Even the atheist, what is there to be anxious about for them? Why is there attachment? Why is there aversion? Why is there so much problems for them? Well, it's all going to end in nothing, so why are you attached? Why are you fearful? Why is a chemical fearful for? Why is, well, Srila Prabhupada writes, where's that? That the survival of the fittest, but nobody survives here. So this is in regards to, this is Bali Maharaj, I'll read this out. But Srila Prabhupada specifically writes at the end of that purport that people are kept in darkness about the goal of life, and thus there is a continuous struggle for existence. We speak of survival of the fittest, but no one survives, for no one is free under material conditions. So this is the position of the living entity, that we are forced to continuously struggle for existence. Everybody's position in this material world is of that continuous struggle. And so Bali Maharaj, in his position of surrendering unto the Supreme Personality Godhead, he says to Bali, to Vamana, he says, what is the use of this material body, which automatically leaves its owner at the end of life? What is the use of all one's family members, who are actually plunderers, taking away money that is useful for the service of the Lord in spiritual opulence? What is the use of a wife? She is only the source of increasing material conditions. And what is the use of family, home, country, and community? Attachment for them merely wastes the valuable energy of one's lifetime. Purport. The Supreme Personality Godhead advises, Sarva dharma parityaja mamekam sharanavaja. Give up all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. This common man does not appreciate such a statement by the Supreme Personality Godhead, because he thinks that during his lifetime, his family, society, country, body, and relatives are everything. Why should one give up any of them and take shelter of the Supreme Personality Godhead? But from the behavior of great personality like Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj, we understand that surrender to the Lord is the right action for an intelligent person. I'm only halfway through the purport here. So in regards to that, Prahlad Maharaj also says, my dear Lord of Vaikuntha planets, where there is no anxiety, my mind, Vaikuntha planets, where there is no anxiety, my mind is extremely sinful and lusty, being sometimes so-called happy and sometimes so-called distressed. My mind is full of lamentation and fear, and it always seeks more and more money. Thus it has become most polluted and is never satisfied in topics concerning you. I am therefore most fallen and poor. In such a state of life, how shall I be able to discuss your activities? So this is the condition of people, that we're so attached to although there is no use of such a thing, of family, home, opulence, wife, kids. Maharaj here, Bali Maharaj is saying, what is the use of all of these things? That attachment for them simply just wastes the valuable human form of life. So much time just wasted in endeavoring for this attachment to this body. At the end, you got to give it up anyways. What's the use? So therefore, intelligent men, those who are Sumedha Saha, what do? They just engage in sacrifice. They engage in the Sankirtan movement. They engage in performing sacrifice for the Supreme Personality Godhead. That sacrifice being of the body, mind, and words of this one's whole self. He gives himself completely. So Prahlad Maharaj, extending on that, Prahlad Maharaj is saying that constantly planning. And Srila Prabhupada writes, I don't think they have the footnotes in these, but in the book, Srila Prabhupada says the mind is always planning for sense gratification. That's the position of the mind. Always planning, always thinking how I can enjoy in this material world in different circumstances and in different positions. Even when you're suffering like hell, the mind will always see, how can I enjoy? How can I enjoy? How can I enjoy? How can I enjoy? Even amongst that's like the situation of that, we have this chewing the chewed. Even though there is no juice, the mind is planning how I can enjoy from this last drop of juice that I'll get. The mind is expounding that. That is, okay, yeah, you'll enjoy. It's just the position of the mind. It constantly plans. Even within devotional service, if you observe your mind, you'll notice that. I can chant my rounds, I'll read enough, and then I can enjoy. Even that's the position of the mind, even in devotional service sometimes. I have that experience. I can't get over with my rounds, get over with my reading, get over with my service, now I can enjoy. That is the position of the mind. Always looking for a position by which it wants to just enjoy. The thought of Krishna is actually quite hard, because as Prahlad Maharaj is saying here, that because we're just so polluted, it is never satisfied with topics concerning you. Just so polluted that we have this jaundice. And with all the way taking sugar candy, it takes a long time for that to purify us. Maharaj says in a place, Getting Tasteful Bhajan, there's a lecture called that, and he talks all about farms. And he's mentioned that or maybe it's another lecture, he mentions that one can't pour ghee from one side and then pour water from the other. That is our situation. That we're chanting Hare Krishna and we're trying to get away the material disease and controlling the mind and doing all of this, but at the same time, the water is ready to come in. Mind is planning. As soon as I can finish my 16, as soon as I can enjoy it, let's do it. And you can have that. You'll have that experience again and again in devotion service. That we are separatists. This is called, at least the platform I'm at. A neophyte is that of a third-class devotee. Separatists. There's like my service to the Lord, and then there's my time. And what's interesting here, there's this pastime of Bali Maharaj is very ecstatic because there's so many things to uncover and understand. Because Bali Maharaj is saying, what is the use of this material body? What is the use of a wife? And what is the use of all of these things? They simply waste one time. Interestingly, his family, his grandfather is Prahlad. And his wife is also an exalted devotee. She's so exalted. What she does is interesting later. When Bali Maharaj is bound up, it's actually in the same chapter, bound up and, sorry, I hope I didn't lose it. Okay, he's bound up and Lord Brahma is there, Prahlad is there. And it's a very bad position for him because, he's the king of the demons. And now he's bound up by Vamanadev. Here, sorry. 8:22:9. Oh my. Okay. Sorry. So his wife, when Brahma is about to come in and offer these prayers, Bali Maharaj's wife jumps in and she starts speaking. I'll pull it up. Sorry, I got to pull this up. I thought I had it up. So she mentions how she actually calls Bali Maharaj a fool in return. She said, let's see here. I'm so sorry. I had it up and then I lost it. Okay. Bali Maharaj's wife, chaste wife, afraid and aggrieved at seeing her husband arrested, immediately offered obeisance to Lord Vamanadev. She folded her hands and spoke as follows. So she cuts in front of Lord Brahma, before Lord Brahma is about to speak. She cuts in and she just speaks. She says that, "O my Lord, you have created the entire universe for the enjoyment of your personal pastimes, but foolish, unintelligent men have claimed proprietorship for material enjoyment." What did Bali do? He took over the whole three worlds. Certainly they are shameless agnostics, falsely claiming proprietorship. They think they can give charity and enjoy. In such a condition, what good can they do for you, who are the independent creator, maintainer, and annihilator of this universe? So what's happened here is that Bali Maharaj is obviously offered Lord Vamanadev, 3 steps of land, and he's taken over the whole universe with 2 steps, and he's saying, well, where is my 3rd step go? And Bali goes, well, on my head. And so here, Vindhyavali, who is the wife of Bali Maharaj, she criticizes him and says, he's a fool. He still considers his body to be his. He still considers his body to be his. And so Srila Prabhupada writes, Bali Maharaj's wife, who was most intelligent, supported the arrest of her husband and accused him of having no intelligence because he had claimed proprietorship of the property of the Lord. Such a claim is a sign of a demoniac life. All the demigods who are officially appointed by the Lord for management are attached to materialistic enjoyment. They never claim to be proprietors of the universe, for they know that the actual proprietor of everything is the Supreme Personality Godhead. This is the qualification of the demigods. But the demons, instead of accepting exclusive proprietorship of the Supreme Personality Godhead, claim the property of the universe for themselves through demarcations of nationalism. This part is mine and this part is yours, they say. This part I can give in charity and this part I can keep for my enjoyment. They're all demoniac conceptions. This is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Idam adya maya labdham imam prapsaye manoratham. Thus far I have acquired so much money and land. Now I have to add more and more. In this way, I shall be the greatest proprietor of everything. Who can compete with me? These are all demoniac conceptions. So, Bali Maharaj's wife accused Bali Maharaj by saying that although the Supreme Personality Godhead had arrested him, showed him extraordinary mercy, and although Bali Maharaj was offering his body to the Supreme Lord for the Lord's third steps, he was still in darkness of ignorance. This is an amazing purport. Bali Maharaj has given up everything. He surrendered to the Supreme Personality Godhead. He intentionally gave it to Vamana, knowing that he was Vishnu. But here Prabhupada says, well, his wife still calls him that you're still in ignorance. Why? Actually, the body did not belong to him. But because of his long-standing demoniac mentality, he could not understand this. He thought that since he had been defamed for his inability to fulfill his promise of charity, and since the body belonged to him, he would free himself from defamation by offering his body. Actually, however, the body does not belong to anyone but the Supreme Personality Godhead, by whom the body is given. So, here I'll skip this little here. Thus, Vindhyavali, Bali Maharaj's intelligent wife, prayed that her husband be released by the causeless mercy. Otherwise, Bali Maharaj was nothing but a shameless demon, specifically described as Tyakta Haryas Tad Avaropita Krita Vadaha, a foolish person claiming proprietorship over the property of the Supreme Person. In this present age, Kali Yuga, the number of such shameless men who are agnostic, disbelieving in the existence of God, has increased. Trying to defy the authority of the Supreme Personality God, so-called scientists, philosophers, and politicians manufacture plans and schemes for the destruction of the world. They cannot do anything for the world, and unfortunately, because of Kali Yuga, they have plunged the affairs of the world into mismanagement. Thus, there is a great need for the Krishna conscious movement for the benefit of innocent people who are being carried away by propaganda of such demons. If the present status quo is allowed to continue, people will certainly suffer more and more under the leadership of demoniac agnostics. So we can see that. A point being made here, I just like to compare the interesting pastime that is going on here, how Bali Maharaj is saying, what is the use of a wife? And then his wife comes in and tells him, what's the use of you? You're an unintelligent demon. You still think this body belongs to you. You have not understood. Considering yourself such a great philosopher, you're propounding this, but look, you're still thinking yourself to be this body. You're still thinking you're the proprietor of the body. So there's an interesting pastime that's going on here where even he's saying family, but then who's his grandfather, Prahlad, is the devotee of the Lord. So what is Bali Maharaj speaking about? He's speaking about the fools who have not surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That they simply see this body separate from the Lord. They see their family separate from the Lord. They see their so-called progress in this world separate from the Lord. They are fools. But the devotees who are able to see them in relationship with the Supreme Personality Godhead, and their family is in relationship with the Personality Godhead, then there's no problem. Then Srila Prabhupada writes that in some places Srila Prabhupada writes that if one cannot take sannyas, or I'm paraphrasing, that if one is engaged fully in the devotional service of the Lord, that is considered sannyas also. That he gives up material activity. He no longer is engaged in material activity, but full-on spiritual activity. So that wife, that house, that husband, that progress of material life, acquisition of material wealth, that is averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is useless. That has no significance. But that, as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur prays also, that I shall see everything in regards to you, my Lord. This house is yours. This wife and children, these are all yours. These are not for me to enjoy, my Lord. As we see from Ambarish Maharaj, he's a great king. He has everything he needs. But at no point or circumstance does he ever consider them to be of his enjoyment. He sees them simply as the platform by which he is trying to serve the Lord. He is in that particular position, but he's not at all influenced by that position. That is the particular position of a devotee. So it's the fools and demons as Prahlad Maharaj says that, oh, best of the great personalities, I'm not at all afraid of material existence, for wherever I stay, I'm fully absorbed in the thoughts of your glories and activities. My concern is only for the fools and rascals who are making elaborate plans for material happiness and maintaining their families, society, and countries. I'm simply concerned with love for them. So our position is of that. We're fools and rascals. At least I am. Fools and rascals, always creating elaborate plans in our minds for material happiness. I'll get this, I'll get that, I'll be this, I'll be that. Even within devotional service, and as we see, Bali Maharaj's pastime, just like I was saying, unlimited things to unpack in that. In Bali Maharaj's position, how he's such a great personality, like his glories are spread, for eternity, of the level of surrender, level of devotion he had to Vamanadev. At the same time, there's also so much to learn from it in Bali Maharaj exhibiting that, you could say, as his own wife says, ignorance of considering even oneself to be separate, one's body to be one's own. As we can take in our own devotion service, we have somewhat surrendered. We've taken this saffron cloth for some of us, full-time devotees, all of us, or most of us here. But at the same time, we still have that level of separation of mine and yours. Mine, and me, myself, and I, aham mameti bhavad, and then there's the Lord's. This is for Krishna and this is for me. We still have that mentality. So here, this is being pointed out. And so that position creates great fear, even within our devotional service. You'll notice that sometimes we become fearful, even within devotional service, of our position, of our service, or of our... That can be good to some extent, but sometimes just anxiety in devotion service. Not the anxiety to serve more, but the anxiety of name, fame, adoration, distinction. That I may not be glorified, I may not be respected, I may not be looked upon as a great Vaishnava. So these are anxieties that we may develop within devotional service, considering ourselves separate. But for a pure devotee of the Lord, they have no such anxieties in regards to themselves, as Prahlad Maharaj is saying here. That for me, I don't care. I have no anxieties, my Lord. No problem. I can always just, Prahlad Maharaj takes the different positions throughout his prayers. If you examine them, he takes the position of a Nitya Baddha, and he also takes the position of a Nitya Siddha in order to explain. He says, well, I have no problem just glorifying you. And previously he was saying, well, how can I even think of your glories when I'm in such a situation? I'm always planning for material happiness. So Prahlad Maharaj, he's the eternal servant of the Lord. He's saying that here that I have no problem just glorifying you, but the fools and rascals, they're always planning for material happiness, and I'm worried about them. So that is our position, that we struggle to, at least I'm having to, by force you could say, read much more of Srila Prabhupada's books. And having that experience of that the mind always wants to do something else. The mind always is planning to do something else. You want to read, but somehow or rather it will convince you to do something that you don't need to do at that time and actually has no use or benefit to you. Your devotional service or to any form whatsoever. But the mind creates a situation which you think, no, you need to do it. No, you need to do it. No, you need to eat right now. No, you need to. Even though you don't actually need it. So unnecessary planning of material happiness. So this creates a situation of material anxieties. And so we try to protect ourselves in many different ways. So we always, you'll see that in our devotional service, as being mentioned here, they're always trying to protect wealth, body, friends. They're filled with lamentation, unlawful desires, and paraphernalia. And they're avarice based their undertakings on perishable conditions of mind. As long as they do not take shelter of your safe lotus feet, they are full of such anxieties. So until we come to the position of full surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even those anxieties will be there in devotional service. Those times which are very difficult, in which one takes a separate position than taking the shelter of the Lord. You'll notice that we always tendency is to go away from the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, to try to consider ourselves somewhat level, to take shelter of material desire than to take shelter of the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the instructions of the spiritual master. When we have difficult times, that's when we can judge where we're at in Krishna consciousness most of the time. is that who do we take shelter of? Do we take shelter of our mind, or do we take shelter of the spiritual master? Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam, as I was reading here before, mentions that point, that in this Bhayam Dviti, so here it's mentioned that therefore an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and his very life and soul. So that is the secret of success, as Srila Prabhupada writes in many, many places. That the secret of success is Yasya Prasada, Bhagavad Prasada, Yasya Prasada, Nagati Gatopi. So that is the secret of success, that one simply satisfies the spiritual master. So, how does one, as Srila Prabhupada also in this purport here, writes, sorry, just going back and forward here, that a pure devotee never thinks of himself as the provider of his home. He surrenders everything under the supreme control of the Lord. Thus, he has no fear for maintaining his family or protecting the interest of his family. So the surrendered devotee, he never has any fear at all. Just like we see Ambarish Maharaj, never fearful. Never fearful. Even Durvasa Muni comes and he curses Ambarish. And there's this fiery demon, wanting to kill Maharaj Ambarish, but he's not worried, he's not fearful, he's not scared. He's simply praying to the Lord, or simply accepting his fate. And the Lord always protects. The Lord always protects his devotees, and especially throughout those, that section of the Srimad Bhagavatam is very clearly mentioned of the devotion of Krishna, of Vishnu to his devotees. Even it's interesting, after Bali Maharaj's pastimes, it goes to Matsya's pastimes. And just before that begins, Parikshit Maharaj asks, I would like to hear about how the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends just to show his love to the devotees. How he performs pastimes just for the sake of the devotees. And as the word in Vishnu Sahasranam, Shanta, that he who is the protector of it, who he exists just for his devotees, for the love of his devotees. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is the protector of those who are surrendered unto him. The more, and Srila Prabhupada writes, the more one is surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the more protection, as one surrenders unto me, I shall reward them accordingly. The more one feels helpless at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the more protection one attains from the Supreme Lord. So when one actually surrenders everything that he has, body, mind, words, and extensions of this body, that is the platform of pure devotional service. But we have so many anarthas to uproot. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam says that only a rare person who has adopted complete unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the roots of sinful actions with no possibility that they will revive. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. So this purport is so long and so much is there, but this bhakti creeper being discussed here, that then there's the upashaka gandha, all of those the weeds of devotional service, that they can be uprooted by how? By simply discharging devotional services. How do we become pure in devotional service? By discharging more devotional service. Bhakti gives a rise to bhakti. Bhaktya sanjayati, what is it? Bhaktya sanjayati, bhakti sanjayati, bhaktya, something like that. There is it? I think there's another verse that says that bhakti gives a rise to bhakti. So the more one goes on discharging devotional service, just as the sun, and so just as one can simply discharge devotional service, sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. By discharging pure devotional service, simply all of this unrooted, all of these weeds that are there can be uprooted all at once. There's this pastimes that Sitala Mataji, I'm just remembering this, that relates in her talk. She says that there's this devotee, she was, amongst all of the difficult times within the movement and that devotees were going through, different devotees were holding different things in their heart, and she was specifically very critical of different devotees and wasn't willing to forgive. And then she prayed to Krishna, said, Krishna, you somehow, I'm not able to give this up. Because it's experience. Sometimes we have anarthas and we're just not willing to give them up, or just can't give them up. And so she said to Krishna, Krishna, I can't give this up, but you please help me. So she developed cancer, I think apparently some sort of cancer on her body. And then that obviously, she apparently had some recovery, but then nothing really, and then it really came down bad. And then on Nrsimha Chaturdashi, she prayed to Lord Nrsimhadev, and she told Shitala Mataji, I know it sounds corny, but it's all gone now. That there was a visible difference in her character and in her forgiving devotees and understanding different people's positions just in one moment. She said in one moment it all went away. She said that to Shitala Mataji wrote it. I know it sounds really corny, but it all went away in one moment. All of the things that I had held in my heart, all of those things on Nrsimha Chaturdashi, that it all just went away. And she's about to leave her body, she's very close to it. And her husband related that, yes, she was a very different person from that moment. That her whole character, her whole behavior, everything was just completely different. And she left her body, going back home, back to Godhead. She was a surrendered devotee of Srila Prabhupada. So we can see how by praying to the Lord, how although we may have desires within our heart to enjoy separately from the Lord, we can recognize those desires and understand that's not pure devotional service. And pray to the Lord, and how the Lord can give us protection in many different ways. That my devotee, declare Arjuna boldly, my devotee shall never perish. Whatever situation he may be in, Tesham Kampart, what is it? Impanu Kampartam, that I shall give them knowledge by which they can come to me, to take them out of the dense darkness of ignorance. We're in ignorance. We don't understand how much different levels of ignorance, even within devotional service, we're in. But that prayer to the Lord to dissipate that ignorance, to guide us, to take us through the difficulties of devotional service, whether one may be in the Brahmacharya ashram, Grihastha ashram, Sannyasa ashram, whatever we may be in, that we can constantly pray to the Lord to guide us, to reveal to us the different levels of ignorance, and to uproot those, just as we pray to Lord Nrsimhadev, that to use the naka, the sharp nails, chisel-like nails, to uproot all of the material desires from our heart, all of these anarthas, and allow us to become pure for the purpose of what? Not so that we can enjoy, so that we can give the Lord enjoyment, so that we can simply be a devotee of the Lord, nothing else. My spiritual, Bhakti Vikas Maharaj relates in one lecture that it's not that we have to do big things to become a pure devotee. That's not what constitutes a big devotee. Srila Prabhupada didn't become a pure devotee after he made all the Western devotees. It's not that. But Srila Prabhupada was already all glorious because he was already surrendered. He was already a pure devotee. Shravan and Kirtana, he was already performing the platform of hearing and chanting about Krishna 24 hours a day. That is what constitutes pure devotional service, to be able to hear about Krishna and chant about Krishna all the time. You try to do it, see how difficult it is. 24 hours a day. So, what is that verse? That the greatest of our advice. How does that start? Sat Krishna Nama Adi Charita Dis Sukirtananu Smrityo Kramena Rasana Manasan Niyojya Tishtan Vraje Taranaragi Jananugami Kalam Nayad Akila Upadesha Saram. That the greatest of our advice is that one should constantly chant the holy name of the Lord 24 hours a day. So you try to do it. You try to center your whole day around hearing and chanting. See what happens. Any time you have, extra time you see how to expand your hearing and chanting. And then utilize that, that should translate into proper service, attitude and mood also. But if you see that, you'll see how agitated your mind becomes. You'll see how agitated your mind becomes when you try to control it. You say, no, I have to read this much every day. And if you find that much reading is allowing you, reading or chanting is allowing you time to space out, then you need to increase your hearing and chanting. You need to set a certain time, and it helps a lot. You set you set a vrata, it's like, okay, I have to do this. There's no option. Srila Prabhupada, his disciples were telling him, we don't have time to read. It's like, don't sleep. Please, make sure you get enough rest and all of this. But he was making the point how important this reading is in this Guru Maharaj's letters. He writes to a devotee that it's more important to read Srila Prabhupada's books than even deity worship. He says that, I'm doing so much deity worship, I don't have time to read Srila Prabhupada's book. He said, well, then give it up. Let someone else do it. Not that we stop worshipping the deity, but let someone else do it. You cut down your services to make sure you have time to read. Worship of Srila Prabhupada's book is even more important in our lives. Because without reading Srila Prabhupada's books, we can't get these understandings. We'll be completely taken up by these upashakas, with these, things, with all of these weeds of devotional service. And we consider those weeds to be the bhakti lata, which would be a problem. So, this being the core that we're always seeing separately from the Lord, and this being the state of our anxiety, even within devotional service, anytime you have difficulties in devotional service, you can always remember this principle, and by this principle we'll be able to overcome all difficulties. As Krishna says, that if you remember me, you'll be able to overcome, you'll be able to overcome this material existence, this nescience. You'll be able to easily cross beyond it. So when we're going through difficulties, we have to constantly remember how we're considering our body, mind, and words to be separate from the Lord. How there's me and then there's the Lord. That we're not using everything in the service of the Lord, whether it's difficult times or good times. That all of those situations should be utilized for the service of the Lord, as Kunti does. What is the service she gives in the difficulty she has? Smaranam, remembering. We wish that those difficulties would come again and again, because I'm able to render service by constantly remembering you, O Lord. And the devotee takes great satisfaction in that. But as long as he's planning for his material existence, Prahlad Maharaj says, I cannot be satisfied. So a devotee who is not satisfied, it can be understood that he is planning for material happiness. As Guru Maharaj says that, black-faced devotees, I mentioned this a few times, that always, why are they in anxiety, why are they unhappy? Because planning for material happiness. It's very clear from the Srimad Bhagavatam what our position is. So we should always recognize it, not think, tendency is, it's it's the atmosphere, it's this, it's that, but no, it's you, it's us. I have so much experience of that, just always, sometimes blaming it. But if we can blame ourselves, what kind of Vaishnav are we? As Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, always examining oneself in all situations. By doing that, one can gradually bring himself up by following the instructions of the spiritual master, hearing the instructions of the spiritual master. We can bring ourselves up. And so whatever situation one may be in, whether it's home, family, wife, kids, situation of, like I said, renounced order of life, or one may be stuck in a terrible situation and one has to engage in material activity and working a job and such and such and such. God forbid we don't have to go there and do all of that. But Srila Prabhupada says, even amongst the material activities of a Vaishnava, he may, if he is absorbed in devotional service, can be situated in complete transcendence. That you cannot understand the workings of the Vaishnava actually. You cannot understand the position of a Vaishnava. It's very difficult. You cannot line them up. Just like we can, on Sankirtan, we can line people up and understand who they are very easily. You can't do that with Vaishnavas, especially those who are on the platform of pure devotional service. It's very difficult to understand their movements, as the Shastra says. So one has to be in the position of devotional service in order to even be able to perceive it or understand it. So always one should become, one's desire should become one with the heart of the spiritual master. That Shri Guru, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Kariya Aika Arana Kariya Mane Ash. That is the central principle of our life. Actually, I was talking to Marge yesterday. He said, actually, we do not examine the progress of someone by them just chanting 16 rounds and following the 4 regulated principles. Actually, that's not what we care about. And so even Mayavadis can chant Hare Krishna and follow the 4 regulated principles. They can chant 16 rounds and follow 4 regulated principles. We do not examine the advancement of a devotee by these two things. We do not examine how many people we bring into this Krishna consciousness movement by them just doing these things, because he's saying that the propagation, oh yeah, we got people to chant 16 rounds and follow 4 regulated principles. But he says, actually, doesn't mean much. What is it actually? This is actually where he didn't say that. This is more or less the purport he was giving. That actually, this is what he exactly said. He said that we care about how much they're able to understand the philosophy and surrender to Krishna. That's what we care about. Because all those other things will come automatically anyways. But we actually care about how much they're able to surrender to Krishna, how dedicated they are to Krishna. That how did that we make our desire with one with the heart of the spiritual master. That is how we judge our advancement. That is the only way we can judge our advancement. And that means that, our material desires, lust, all of these things have to become rooted out. So that is the test of advancement in devotional service. How much can we make our lives centered around Krishna? Not just centered around Krishna, just Krishna consciousness. That is it. That is everything. And Prahlad Maharaj says that later. Krishna, you are everything. What are you not? You're everywhere. You're the mind, intelligence, falsehood. You're all of this. There is nothing separate from you, my Lord. I consider everything. Everything is yours. There's nothing separate from you. So we should consider our life to be only Krishna's. There's no center of our lives. Our life is Krishna's. So by situating our life constantly like this, amongst the different difficulties, there's no doubt about it, devotion service is simple, but it's not easy. We're all going through difficulties of our own, and as Bhagavatam says, it's hard for others to understand our own level of difficulties. But we won't see those difficulties if we can see Krishna. And those difficulties will be very insignificant, because all those difficulties are arising from different material conceptions of life. So this is the platform of pure devotional service. This is the platform of simply by discharging devotional service, simply by remembering Krishna, by hearing about Krishna, by discussing his pastimes, we can easily overcome this, as Krishna says himself, that Devyesha gunamayi mama maya durati. Actually impossible to overcome. Actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti writes in this verse of Bhayam Dvitiya Abhivinisheshatah, that he writes that people may think, the cause of a problem in my life, fear, is due to ignorance. If I just get knowledge, then I'll be fine. But he says, no. You don't understand. Devyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. That this illusion is impossible to overcome. Unless those who are surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there is no option. Although we're independent, actually there's no independence. There's only one thing to do. Independently surrender to Krishna. That's the independence we have. Other than that, actually you don't have independence. You're controlled by material nature. That's it. What do you want? Ultimately you have to do this. There's no option. You have to surrender to Krishna, wherever it is, now or later. Better to do it now. So, it's difficult. I'm not saying that it's okay, that's it. But the process of surrender, Sharanagati, that is the very life of the devotee. So we should constantly examine ourselves, follow the instructions of the spiritual master, read Srila Prabhupada's books, intensify our hearing and chanting, and go on in Krishna consciousness. Okay, I better end here. Is there any questions or comments? Please feel free to ask. Yes, Jitagirish Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. At the end you were talking about what is our independence? And the only thing we're independent of is whether we're surrendering to Krishna or we're surrendering to Maya.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like, okay, so then you also speak about the principle of Atmanivedanam.
Mm-hmm.
And Bali Maharaj, he gave everything to Krishna. But then his wife pointed out, well, actually nothing even belongs to you. So I was thinking about what's like the higher understanding of Atmanivedanam, and it seems like the only thing we can give is that decision to surrender to Krishna. Like, anyway, I guess previously I understood Atmanivedanam mean, okay, you give everything, you give your okay, if you have a family, you give your family to Krishna. If you have money, you give money to Krishna. If you have time, you give your time to Krishna. But actually these gifts to Krishna are just symptomatic of that decision of, I'm going to give my attention to Krishna.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's a perfect understanding that one may give so many things also, like, but again, like it comes to like Bali, it's like we may consider oneself to be separate at the same time. So yeah, it's that independence to consider oneself to be the proprietor. You belong to the Lord. Nothing belongs to you. What do you give? As just Srila Prabhupada gives that example many times throughout these like pastimes. Just as the devotee you take Ganga and you offer back to Ganga. You never consider at any point the Ganga to be yours. But it's the simple offering of the devotee. Bhakti mam abhijanati. It's the bhakti that is the essence of all of those things. So sometimes you may not be able to give anything also. Your body may be messed up, you may not have a family, you may not have money, all of these things, but it's the service to the Lord, is that attitude of service to the Lord. That is what we can give. Actually, that's the only thing we can give. That's the only independence thing. Because like you said, like we come into this world and nothing. What belonged to Bali anyways? Didn't belong to him. Well, he took it from the demigods first of all, and then and then he lost it all again. But that Bali made that independent choice, despite of even Shukracharya pushing him not to do it. Don't do it. Why? He's come here to cheat you. How will you maintain your life? How will you maintain your material life? Don't do it, Bali. I know this is Vishnu. It's like, okay. It's okay. It's fine. And he gives so many things to Shukracharya, but ultimately he knows, this is what I want. Bali knows, I want this. I've been waiting for Guru Maharaj. I've been waiting for this my whole life. I've been having to disguise myself in this form of a demon and perform my duty as a demon, but actually, this is what I want. And so the devotee, that's the independence that we have, is to surrender to Krishna. Actually, even surrender to Maya, it's not really independence. Call it independence, but it's not independence. It's force. The modes of mature nature, they force us to act in the ways that we do. Our senses almost force us. We have level of choice, you could say, but it's almost like you're just pulled. You don't really, what independent choice? There's a karma you have in not enjoying sex desire. Well, you have to. So that's the only enjoyment you got. So the only independence is like surrender to Krishna. It's the only really choice we have. Don't really have any other choice. Everything else is just forced. It's just that Krishna only gives us. It's just by nature we're just pulled and just taken into different pools of material existence, and we do that by, like I said, some level of choice. But it's not choice. It's like averse to Krishna. It's just the other end of that. It's like, okay, but the only choice we have is to surrender. So better to just do it.
Wow, I really like that. The only choice is to surrender to Krishna, because otherwise you just float downstream.
Yeah.
It's either just float downstream or surrender to Krishna.
That's real freedom.
Yeah.
That's real choice. It's freedom. Is okay, to surrender to Krishna, you get freedom. You get abhayam. You become fearless.
I just had one small thing to also add, and it seems like the process of bhakti, like sadhana bhakti, it starts by maybe even mechanically practicing, mechanically giving up things, like externally surrendering your things, but not internally surrendering. But then that's like the process. Slowly we develop that internal by...
Guru Maharaj says that in one lecture, says that chanting, sometimes we don't have taste for chanting, but we begin it mechanically to some extent. But there is taste, because we go on doing it and doing it. Yeah, it develops. And taste comes. And just the jaundice and the sugar, that's the best example. Yes.
I also read this story about Prithu Maharaj, and you remember he wanted to sacrifice the horse 100 times, and after some time, when Indra came, like you told in the beginning, he became envious because he did this 100 sacrifices, and Prithu Maharaj did 99, and the last one he came, stole this horse once, twice, and this is very, really amazing. And then Brahma came and he told, Prithu, what are you doing? What is the point? You are devotee. What is the point? This is sacrifices. If you are where is the devotion here? You want to be proud of this. What is the reason? And then he stopped these things, and Vishnu he came. And he told, my devotee who is connected with me in intense friendship and affection, being completely in knowledge, is never agitated by material happiness and distress. And commentary Srila Prabhupada told, the question may be raised that if the living entity has to act as the superintendent of the activities of the bodily combination, then how can he be indifferent to the activities of the body? The answer is given here. These activities are completely different from the activities of the spiritual soul of the living entity. A crude example can be given in this connection. This is an amazing example. I was surprised. A businessman riding in a motor car sits in the car, supervises its running and advises the driver. He knows how much gasoline is used up, and he knows everything about the car, but still he is apart from the car and is more concerned with his business. Even while riding in the car, he thinks of his business and his office. He has no connection with the car, although he is sitting there. As the businessman is always absorbed in thoughts of his business, so the living entity can be absorbed in thoughts of rendering loving service to the Lord. Then it will be possible to remain separate from the activities of the material body. This position of neutrality can be possible only for a devotee. It's an interesting example. I forget about this. You can sit in the car, you know everything, but driving is the car, and you all know all these things, but still you absorb your thoughts and business in your office and all that, like a pure devotee. And we thinking really, when we became very absorbed and do some material activity, like this is 100 sacrifices. And it is another interesting point when Brahma came told, if you will not stop to do the sacrifices, Indra can create more cheating activity, more cheating the processes, how to stole this horse. And because of that, if he will continue on all the sacrifices, he will continue to explain more, to create more. And after this, the people can use this. All this, nowadays, all these sannyasis wearing this sannyasi dress, and they go to collect some money, and they cheat the people, and the Indra show them all these things, and because of this, Indra showed all these methods for the mundane people they can use now, and because of that he told that please stop, don't do this. And our mind also like this. If you have this a desire to be famous or glorified by another people, your mind to create all these cheating systems. Or maybe I can do like this, maybe I can do like this, maybe I can do like this, maybe I can do this. They stop. It's very, very, very dangerous.
Yeah. When you get, especially we have so many pastimes like that. Even Dhruva Maharaj, he gets absorbed in just killing these yakshas. And then he's reminded, oh, okay, all right, I better stop. And then even we have, who's another, later in the Bhagavatam, he's a brahmachari, and then Brahma has to come and tell him, well, you have to get married. Priyavrta?
Yes.
Priyavrta, and then it describes how, it's like, oh, he fell into Maya, and it says like this, and Srila Prabhupada describes and like that. And then later, he takes a position of, but he goes back to Godhead because he followed the instructions of Lord Brahma, the grandfather, spiritual master. And so the tendency, the Bhagavatam is displaying our tendency to sometimes fall into material activity. But if one can, so therefore one must stay absorbed in whatever you're absorbed in. You just kind of forget about the other thing. You notice that, like you get absorbed in like doing service, you forget about everything else. I forget my family exists sometimes. And like I haven't called them in like 2 months. It's like, oh damn, I better call them, and because you like got so many things to do. Sometimes you just don't have time to like, even like think about those sort of stuff. But then if I was like, if you've seen that with devotees, sometimes then they finish ashram life, go into, start to change into ashram, and then they get absorbed in having to get their house together, money together, life together, and then like what happened? You see them once a year, and so then they just became absorbed. But for them, it's like it became normal, and then later something clicks, and you go, oh, what was I doing? And then they like come back. So yeah, whatever you absorb your mind in. Okay, is there anything else from the Matajis? Okay, Iman Mataji has something. Yeah, it's a really tough question. What should have Bali Maharaj done?
Hare Krishna. I was really appreciative of when you were saying that, when we chant our 16 rounds and then at the end, then our mind just instantly goes, okay, like, how can we start enjoying? I can't remember if it was a lecture I heard from, but I heard this saying that it's better to be a fanatic than a fool, like to really engage yourself in, your chanting and your devotional service. You had also mentioned that if we're not reading, or if we're not, or like specifically if we're not reading, Srila Prabhupada's books, then we have to kind of, take some time out away from something because Srila Prabhupada's books are the essence. And it reminded me of, again, I can't remember who I had this conversation with, but it reminded me of this conversation that I had that, you had also mentioned anxiety. So to my understanding, like anxiety is when we're anxious about, how can I get this, or when will I get this, and just thinking about the future. But also, that's why, being absorbed is so important. Because if you're absorbed like right there in the moment, then you don't have time to think about, other things. So I was just commenting that I just really appreciate it when you said that.
Thank you. So Vishnuchitta Prabhu asked a really good question here. What should have Bali Maharaj done in the situation instead of offering his body by asking the Lord to consider his head as the third step? There's nothing more perfect than what Bali Maharaj did. The pastime is there to show us and teach us. It's not that Bali Maharaj is at all any less. What else could a devotee desire than to have the feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead on his head? So his actions are completely perfect in that regard. There's no discrepancy. We're just giving the pastimes here, and how Srila Prabhupada is commenting. There's nothing more perfect that Bali Maharaj could have done. There's everything that he did there. It's like, and who am I to say he could have done something better? But it's just like the pastime of the humor and the pastime that he did with the Lord, the loving relationship, and back and forward. So yeah, there's nothing better that Bali Maharaj could have done. Nothing at all. It's all glorious, everything. And Srila Prabhupada writes that many times, that Bali Maharaj's position is all glorious, and the way he surrendered and the way he gave everything, he was glorified for millenniums, forever. So nothing better that he could have done. It's just in the pastimes of the Lord. It's so much. It's just the simultaneous achinta bheda veda tattva, simultaneous, like this is like, there's, you could say, discrepancies, like his wife may point out, but at the same time it's all perfect. but that discrepancy made to be able to show us and to give us some teaching that, hey, we're performing devotion service, but in our position, we're always considering ourselves to be separate and trying to enjoy separately. So there's nothing more perfect that Bali Maharaj could have done. Everything he did is, in regard to surrender to the Supreme Personality of God, is absolutely perfect. It's a question for his wife, yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Is there anything else? No?
Recently it was discussed, I think it came up actually, like that Ramaja said like Prabhupada's contribution was greater than that of Bali Maharaj or something.
Oh yeah, that he was talking with some devotee, and he was, I don't remember the word to word, but he was saying how Bali Maharaj's position is so great, but then the other devotee, actually Srila Prabhupada's position is even greater, because he not only surrendered to the Lord, but he made everyone else surrender to Krishna. Along those lines, paraphrasing. Yeah, this is Vyasa Puja offering, that's right. Yeah, that's where it's from. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.